In this tutorial, we'll learn about HTML forms and semantic elements which were introduced in HTML5 to improve the structure and accessibility of web pages. In HTML, a form is an element that allows users to input data and submit it to a server for processing. They can be used for a variety of purposes, such as registering users, collecting user feedback, or allowing users to make purchases. To create a form in HTML, we use the form tag. Let's say we have a registration page where we need to ask our users for their name, email, and password. Let's add a heading to our page. Now we need to add the form tag to create a form. Inside of the form tag, we add inputs for each fields that we want to collect. For example, we want to collect the name of the users. For that, we will create an input tag and we specify the type attribute. In this case, it's just a simple text. And usually we add two more properties to the input elements, which are ID as a name and name. And inputs are also self-closing tags, so we don't need to add closing tags to it. For each input, we also need to add a label element. For label, the one important attribute is for, which needs to be equal the same name which we specified on our input, which is the name in this case. And the content inside of the label is the content which will be rendered for this input element. In this case, it should be name. If we save this and go back to our browser, we will see our registration form with one single input and the label which is rendered near this input. So let's say we need to also collect their email and password. Let's add two more inputs here. We can copy this input with its label. Now for the second input, we need to collect the email, so we will give the content as email, and we also need to change the for attribute on the label to email, and also all the attributes on the input must be email. If we save and go back, we will see our email input. We will do the same for the password. So the for attribute on label must be password. We will change the content to password. And also all the attributes for the input element must be password. If we save and go back, we will see our password element as well. Finally, we need to add a submit button to each form, because whenever user entered their name, email, and password, they want to submit it for processing in the backend. To add the submit button, we again use the input element. Just this time the type equals to submit. This tells the element that this is a button instead of the input which collects data. We need to specify the value, which is basically the content that will be rendered inside of this button. And if we save and go back, we will see that we have our three inputs which collect the user data, and we have the register button which will send the information for processing after user click on this register button. Now let's talk about semantic elements. Semantic elements are HTML tags that give meaning to the content on your web page, making it easier for search engines and screen readers to understand. Some of the important HTML5 semantic elements are header, nav, article, section, aside, and footer. Let's start from the header. This tag defines a header section for the document or section. For example, in our case, we can add a header tag, and we can put this register heading inside of the header. This doesn't change anything visually. It is for search engines and screen readers to understand the content of your website easier. Next semantic element is nav, which defines a navigation section for the document. For example, we can have a navigation tag on the top and here specify where we are currently in our navigation of the web page. For example, with paragraph tag, we can tell here that we are inside of the home register page, and we can see our nav tag here with its paragraph tag. We also have the main element which defines the main content of the document. In our case, the main content of our document in this page is the form, so we can add the main tag here and put this form inside of the main tag. We also have the article element, which defines an independent, self-contained piece of content, such as blog post or news article. For instance, we can use the article tag if we have some kind of news or article in our page. We can add a heading tag to this, saying that this is an article. and the content inside of it we can add with the paragraph tag. If we save this and go back, here is our article element which contains the heading and the content of the article. We have section which defines a section of related content within the document. A common use case for this is inside the article. We may have an article, and inside of the article we can have different sections. We can create two sections inside of this article. For the first section we can say introduction, and let's say the second section is the main content. And for each section we will have the content inside of the paragraph tag. Now we can see our article, but with two independent sections, the introduction and the main content. And lastly we have the footer semantic element. This element defines a footer section for the document or section. Almost every website has a footer, and this is used at the bottom of the body tag. Inside of the footer we can add the content, and for example right here copyright 2023. And if we go back to our web page, we can see our footer right at the bottom of the page. If you are looking to advance your HTML skills even further, here are some suggestions for next steps. Learn CSS to create more visually appealing and dynamic web pages. I'll be covering CSS in a future tutorial, but you can also refer to the official documentation, which I'll link in the description. Dive deeper into HTML by exploring the official HTML documentation for in-depth information and resources. And try building a simple web page using the HTML tags you've learned. Thanks for completing this course, and wish you the best of luck in your web development journey.